So my lightning talk is it's like a 5-minute on DBIX class. Show of hands, who's used DBIX class? A couple, 3 people, okay. So for review of how we do database interaction with Perl, the way that most people do it is with DBI. And DBI lets you issue SQL queries. It lets you bind variables so that you can pass them into the query and use placeholders. And then once you get results back from a query, DBI makes it easy for you to iterate over your results. So, but in a lot of applications, you have very complex schemas. To the right side there, you see that we have an example of an entity relationship diagram that's pretty complex. I'm sure there's far more complex ERDs out there, but whenever you have a complex schema like this, it's very, very common that you're going to need to do a lot of joins to get the kind of data that you want, because you have relationships between your data. And doing that with DBI means that you have to use SQL to join between tables to get the results out of the different tables in the format that you want. And that's, you know, if you're a master of SQL, that's not a big deal. You can probably do that with do it in your sleep. But not everybody is up to the task of doing that. So now, with that in mind, let's talk about object relational mapping, or ORM, or some people call it object relational modeling. From Wikipedia, we see that is defined as a programming technique for converting data between incompatible type systems in an object-oriented programming languages. This creates, in effect, a virtual object database that can be used from within the programming language. So essentially, what you have is the ability to use objects when behind the scenes you're talking database tables. And then you can use object methods to kind of work through the relationships between those tables. So some ORM examples, lots of different languages have them. Java has Hibernate. Python has a couple, PHP has a couple, Ruby has at least one, and Perl has DBIX class. Now, DBIX class isn't the only one, but it seems to have kind of risen to the top. Class DBI was used for many years, and DBIX class was an answer to some of the complaints that people had about class DBI. So. Some ORM concepts in pseudocode. This slide is not syntactically correct, but if we can assume that the ORM scalar is an object reference to our object relational mapper, and fetch is a method that allows us to search on a named table, and then we can pass in some sort of parameters of that search with a where. And we can fine-tune the results with an order by method, so forth. We kind of get the idea that we get a list of objects, and then we can iterate over those objects. You'll see in our for each loop, we have some methods that give us access to fields in the table, like title is a field within this post table. This is kind of a blog. A blog paradigm is what I'm using as an example. You have a blog with authors and categories and statuses and so forth. But the second say in that for each loop gives you the example of how we have a post object, and we can journey through to a related table just by calling its name. So we have a post, and there's a foreign key to a category table. And so this allows us to go just straight through to the category table and grab the field, the name field. And the same thing with the author. We can go right through from post to author and get access to the field's first name and last name. So some fundamentals of DBIX class is before you can start using it, you have to have some definition of your schema. And so over to the right side here, you can see this is a schema class that describes our post table. And so we have, the table is named post. We have some columns, ID, which is defined, the next line down as the primary ID. We have a title, published date, author ID, body, category ID, status ID. And then you can see that we specify the foreign key relationships. We say that this post belongs to an author table, and that is linked by the author ID field. The category is linked by category ID. The status is linked by status ID. So this the schema class defines the fields, relationships to other tables, and the keys. So once you have this in place for all your tables, then you can go start using it. And this is an example of a script that connects to the database. The syntax there is very similar to DBI. We use DBI format of connection. The DSN is very similar there. And then we use we do a search, and we're basically passing the criteria for the search, and we're saying return all the results of that search, and that gives us a list of objects, and then our for each loop goes through and iterates over that. So very fast overview of DBIX class. Some of the automation that the DBIX class, or DBIC as some people call it, the automation that's available here, writing your schema classes, is really tedious. So there is another module called DBIX class schema loader that adds so much value to DBIC. One thing you can do is you can use it to say, here's the DSN for my database, go out and analyze my database and create the schema classes for me. So that it'll go out and peruse your database and create your schema classes automatically. You have the option of doing it once and then creating the .pm files for all your classes, or you can do it dynamically so that every time you fire up your application, it goes out and creates on the fly your schema classes in memory. And that's kind of nice because then you don't have to worry about, is the classes that I'm using, are they out of date with the database? If the database is getting schema changes, you don't have to worry about that. But the downside is you have more startup overhead doing that. Or some people, I don't know who, but some people will they will design their schema using the DBIX class schema classes, and then with that in mind, they can have Perl generate the create table statements that then go out and create the actual database schema. DBIX class schema loader comes with a command line utility called dbic dump, and this is what you would use once you have a database. You want the database analyzed and create the schema classes for you. This is an example of what you do. You give it the directory to dump it out to. The base class namespace, and then the DSN for connecting to it, and it'll go out and generate all your modules for you. This is an example of if you want to create your schema classes on the fly. So you would have this in your script, and it just makes the schema, and then at this point, after you've run that, then you can access your database through the object like you would if you had defined all your classes in modules sitting on disk. For more information, there's a website, dbixclass.org. There's excellent pods. The newish beginning Perl book that Curtis Ovid Poe wrote has some stuff on DBIC. And then these ancient Catalyst books also are kind of known to have really good chapters on DBIC. So that's all for me.
Thank you. one question. We want